Hey everyone, it's Ivan with KidBadger.com here today, continuing our journey of Rifle 301 by Sawtooth Rifles. If you've been following along the journey of Rifle 301 by Sawtooth Rifles, I ended up finishing building this thing out with Matt Yore, and at that point it was unfired, so I needed ammo. And since this was a pretty cool and special project for my son, probably wanted something other than just some like Remington core locked. So needed to find some ammo. As luck would have it, in my backyard of North Idaho is Unknown Munitions. Really awesome, small, family-run business that specializes in making ammo. I say specializes in making ammo. You're like, okay, well, Hornady makes ammo. Your uncle down by the river in his van makes ammo. Yes, but special ammo. So let's quantify special. So we want something that is really good. Again, need to quantify that. We want something that will be as accurate as it can be for any given rifle. Along those lines, accuracy, that's huge, which in turn comes down to consistency, whether it's brass, powder, loaded, all that stuff, a lot of science, a lot of meticulousness going into that. So we want that consistency for accuracy, but then the other part of like good ammo is what are we gonna use it for? So if I'm gonna end up shooting, I don't know, like matches, like PRS, something along those lines, I obviously want a different bullet than if I'm gonna go hunting. Those are not the same bullets. They might be open tip match, it might look like a hollow point, they perform differently. So we want different ammo for different applications. One of the things you run into when you go purchase ammo off the shelf, like commercially at wherever, like Walmart or whatever local sporting goods store, you run into limitations with respect to bullets. So we want good ammo. Going back to those bullets, we want bullets that are going to perform for the exact task we have in hand or at hand. So in this case, I'm going to end up doing some hunting with this. So I want good hunting bullets. You can't always find something off the shelf. And then in addition to that, even if you can, it's loaded for like the average, which might not be what you want. So by average, I mean, as far as the actual charge in there, so the velocity of it, and also the overall length. So depending on your rifle and the bullet and the powder charge and all these other things, all these different variables, if you load things longer, so the overall length of the cartridge is longer, you can kind of squeeze some performance out of it with respect to terminal ballistics, as well as just like traveling down range ballistics. So to that end, you have to kind of dip into some specialty ammo. That's where Unknown Munitions comes in. So what exactly does Unknown Munitions do? Well, they make ammo specific to your gun, to your magazine, to your chamber, all of it. So how does the process start? Well, initially I went down there and I said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is the gun I'm going to be using. Gonna have a silencer on there. Yeah, here's the action, on and on and on. So the first step was actually a bunch of measuring, trying to figure out essentially the distance from the back of the bolt face to where the lands and grooves start. And so essentially trying to figure out like kind of that chamber and everything like that, and how much space there is in there for a bullet. Because if you have a bullet that is set, I guess, relatively far back in the case, and it has to jump really far before it hits those lands and grooves, it can be detrimental to accuracy versus something that is up close to the lands and grooves, so when it fires, it doesn't have to move very far before it makes contact with the lands and grooves, and consequently, you often get better performance out of that. But again, going back to factory ammo, it's pretty vanilla because they just want to make something kind of middle of the road that'll work in most guns. So I had to start with measuring. What we ended up doing was essentially doing just that, measuring and trying to figure out that distance. If you are looking to get ammo made for your gun, one of two ways. You can either send the gun to Unknown Munitions, which I guess in my case, I kind of did that, drove it over there, or he actually sells kits. And the kits basically come with a piece of brass, same type of brass that you are wanting to use for your ammo that's gonna get loaded. In my case, it was Lapua, and it's basically threaded in essentially this measurement tool. to include the bullet you're going to use. So that's important also, because we want to make sure we're taking measurements with the actual projectile we're going to use for our final product for that ammo. So after initially taking those measurements, basically figured out, hey, this is what we're working with. So we need to make things kind of within the parameters of that. Also, the important measurement is your magazine. Different magazines are made of different materials. Polymer ones are obviously thicker. So if you can move to something metal, usually with thinner walls, you increase that capacity. Capacity by overall length. If you have a reduced dimension inside your magazine, obviously that's going to be a limitation. So if for whatever reason in your barrel, you actually have a lot of space there before you get to the lands and grooves, you can load the projectile further out, and that in turn gives you even more case capacity for more powder, so you can shoot it faster, but none of that matters if it won't fit in your magazine. So taking all these factors into account, basically there at Unknown Munitions, they figure out kind of right around where the sweet spot's probably going to be with respect to your ammo.
So the base ogive measurement is specific with this caliper and this comparator and this insert. So what this measurement is telling us is basically what the 108 Burger Elite Hunter, what is the measurement, your base ogive touching the lands in your rifle. When we start your load development process, we'll back off about 20 thousandths to make sure that we're not going to get into any pressure issues while you're doing your optimal charge weight ladder test.
At that time, this rifle was unshot and it needed to be shot. Why? Because before they go through the process of making ammo specific to your gun, they want to make sure your gun has basically leveled off. So if you have a brand new rifle, unless it is hand lapped, and even then if your barrel's hand lapped, you probably will need to shoot it some. And as you shoot it, what'll happen is little bits of copper will fill in little imperfections in the barrel, little microscopic imperfections. And what that'll do is usually increase the muzzle velocity of your gun a little bit, and then it'll pretty much level off, and it'll be that largely for the life of your barrel. So how many rounds does that take? Who knows? Totally depends on the barrel. This right here is a Criterion barrel, but for the sake of, hey, we need to go ahead and make sure this is shot so that we end up with a stable muzzle velocity. He ended up loading up 50 rounds for this gun in 243 using the brass that I was going to use, Lapua brass, so it would end up being essentially form fired to this chamber and sent me out to the range to go gather some data. This being my son's rifle, only fair that he should start putting in those first rounds through it. So both my boys and I, we went out to the range, threw a magneto speed on here that I had got from shooting surplus and got after it, shooting some grooves. Try and keep looking through the scope after you fire.
Okay. It's a little bit hard because the recoil.
I understand. Try and stay on the scope.
Okay, my turn. Right in the bullet.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Put it back on safe. Are you sure that went in the bullseye?
I think so.
All right.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, let me look too. We eventually went through shooting strings of 5 shots, trying to kind of get the best group we could. Granted, some of those groups we were just kind of, well, at the end of the day we were just having fun. And oftentimes we were, all 3 of us, shooting for that same group. And still got some semi-decent groups out of it. But ended up going through and shooting through a number of those different rounds. I don't know, probably about 20 rounds that day, and notating all the different speeds of each of those rounds that we fired through Rifle 301, so that we could take it back later and graph it once we finished basically shooting through all 50 rounds. Later, meeting up with my buddy Bill Rapier of Amtac Shooting, went out to go do some shooting, and he was zeroing in his new 300 Norma mag, and at the same time I was like, well, may as well put some more rounds through Rifle 301. So again, threw the magneto speed on here and proceeded to shoot some more groups and gather the rest of that data I needed with respect to velocities for those first 50 rounds loaded up by unknown munitions.
One, two, three.
Oh, dude.
After shooting through those 50 rounds and gathering almost all of the velocities, a couple slipped through my fingers, user error with respect to that magneto speed, but after taking all those velocities, putting them into a spreadsheet, what did it show me? Exactly what unknown munitions said would happen. Basically watching the average velocities increase till they kind of peaked and then more or less plateaued off. So what does that tell me? It tells me we're now ready for real ammo, or at least one step closer. Next step, go ahead and get some rounds loaded up for a actual ladder test with this gun. What is that? Well, unknown munitions will then, again, once they make sure that your gun, your barrel has basically reached that baseline, they'll load up a series of rounds for your gun. So again, you choose your brass, in this case, Lapua, choose your projectile, depending on what it is you are looking to accomplish, whether it's target, hunting, whatever it may be. And essentially a number of rounds loaded up with different powder charges and maybe different overall lengths. So trying to find that sweet spot with respect to the round that you're going to be shooting and that powder charge and your actual gun. So next step will be to take a series of rounds out with 2 different variations in actual powder and go put them through Rifle 301 and ultimately see what I'm going to end up landing on. Really cool though, it's neat to, as a shooter that largely doesn't dip into like technical side of reloading or anything like that, it's really neat to, one, be exposed to it and see actually everything that goes into it. I mean, you buy ammo off the shelf and it's like, okay, cool, like I got some ammo, but it's neat to see all the different variables that can actually be manipulated to get the most out of your rifle for your actual application. So looking forward to continuing the journey. Down below, there'll be a link. You can go ahead and check it out. Go over to Unknown Munitions, see the stuff they do there. But yeah, I will report back when I get going with that ladder test. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.
That is amazing, man. Your trigger pull is starting when there's still daylight. There was like a 1/4 inch of daylight in between. Like you were like slow, 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 slow. You got to that 1/4 inch, wham!
Full send.
Send it.